Hey everyone, it's so great to be with you all again. I'm Klay Williams. I am a purpose and wellness coach for older adults, a filmmaker, a founder, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Well, what have I left off, Sandy?
Miracle worker, a warrior for the my generation. So,
It's so great to be with you all. Listen, Sandy is no stranger to you all, especially if you've been following the Just Beginning project from the very beginning. And we decided we want to just get together and throw around some thoughts, things that we've been reflecting on, and conversations that we're having. As you know, Sandy is a trainer for our trainer program, and she's migrating with the Just Beginning project as we continue to move forward. And so, Sandy, for folks who do not know you at all, how would you introduce yourself? Who are you right now in the world
oh, right now at this present moment,
at this present moment? Yeah.
okay. I would probably say that. Oh, that's a good question. Change of identity, basically. Right now, I'm Sandra Bello, and I'm a mother, grandmother,
Hmm.
um, and currently, despite all the challenges that I've faced recently with loss in the family, I'm beginning to live my best life.
Huh. I'm beginning to live my best life.
Hmm.
And I love the fact, Sandy, that you took some time to think about that. And we're going to talk in this conversation today, literally about the transitions that a lot of people are making into retirement and how forcefully people are saying, I am this based off of what their former life was, rather than the transition that they are taking. And so when you and we were having just a conversation to catch up, you were sharing that one of the things that you have experienced and you see in your generation in particular is taking stress and anxiety, folks, and anxiety as a lifestyle
Mm,
from their current previous work when they were in a traditional career, 9 to 5, the mom, the dad, and all the different titles and identity structures that have been at play, and taking that and moving that into retirement. And so when you think about the living a lifestyle as anxiety and stress, in particular for your generation, what experiences come to mind for you, even personally?
For me, even personally, I would have to say was the realization that I think sometimes we perceive stress and anxiety to be kind of like an umbrella and it covers like everything,
Hmm.
but there's different levels and there's different categories.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, you have, like you said, being the stress of a wife, a mother, a caregiver. Um, if you're into community service,
Hmm.
there's a different stress level there. And also depending on the career that
Hmm.
you have. If you're in a position where I was in the medical profession, so if you're a teacher, a doctor, a bus driver, any
Hmm.
kind of work where you're communicating and dealing with the public, there's different stressors because we always have to maintain our professionalism,
Right.
all right, and always in the forefront. We've been, I'm not going to say programmed, but trained about being conscious of people. And, there's so much awareness now of different disabilities and
Hmm.
mental health issues. So to treat all these individuals with respect
Hmm.
and care, you're learning sometimes as you go along, because I don't think any of that is covered in when you're applying for a job into your introduction or
Hmm.
whatever it is. So some of it you learn. For me, my position, because I was always in direct patient care,
Hmm.
I learned to compartmentalize it
Yeah.
differently because I was dealing with patients. I had to answer to families. I had to answer to doctors. So that stress level was, different. My role was to make sure the patient was okay and to comfort the family and give them the answers and the transparency that they needed to deal
Mm,
with what's happening at the time. So
mhm,
that's one level. In the course of the years, I had to learn, and it happened, I think, when my children were very young, especially when I was working with pediatrics. I had to learn that I had to decompress from that and change it
mhm.
because for a little bit, it was filtering into my interaction with my children and family at home.
So, if I hear you correctly, the sort of programming that you were taught professionally around stress, anxiety, not only was it just sort of the way that it just was in the profession, you also saw that it was filtering into how you were interacting with your kids and your home life.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And
But
yeah,
mhm,
so I had to do, how do you call it? I guess my level of awareness of how that was filtering in happened. I remember at a dinner table with the three boys,
mhm,
and kids are going to be kids. They're going to, spill stuff, talk, and stuff like that.
right.
And all of a sudden, I found myself being very curt, very short, and it was the look on their faces when, you know, I I was very firm but very hard, and there
Mhm.
was no need for it.
Hmm.
And, I caught myself. My husband looked at me. The boys looked so sad. I had to get up, remove myself, go to the bathroom,
Mm.
pull myself together, have a good cry, and
Mhm.
say, this can't, I can't do this to them.
Hmm. Hmm.
But there wasn't very much resources at that time uh, that I could go to because of my schedule and the children too. So I kind of had to, like, trial and error work as I go and teach myself.
Mhm.
Um,
So
Even hitting the bookstores, trying to find out if there was like the, I think at that time self-help corners were just being developed and
like a
stuff.
little small.
I know. And I'm saying, so, I would go to the store and the girl would say, "What are you looking for?" I said, "I'm in desperate need of some help how to separate stress, my job from my family because I need to be okay here."
Yeah.
So,
And I love that you identify that because especially for the baby boomer generation, and you and I have shared conversations and sharing from the actual pilot film, all the things that are at our disposal, the therapy, different self-help books and conversations, it really was the thing that was sort of taboo when you were in your profession, especially starting up. And so for a lot of folks who are in your generation, and I know a lot of people who are in my generation, I'm a millennial, they're oftentimes judging our parents, older adults, why did you not know this when all the resources that we have at our disposal now, Gen Z, millennials, it was nothing like that in comparison to what you all did not have.
exactly. And then the thing is that I think a lot of people forget my generation, the baby boomers, and I don't know if I'm using this term correctly, the generation before us, our parents, I think they were called the silent
Yeah, the silent generation.
generation.
Mhm,
So think about them not having any resources whatsoever,
mhm,
carrying over maybe some unhealthy, not useful traits of taking care of the family, learning to distinguish, you know, stress, anxiety, just different things, identifying it. And then, the mentality of what do I remember from them? Oh, put on your big girl panties and deal with it. And,
mhm.
boys weren't supposed to cry. And, this is life. Life is not easy and stuff like that. It was like you were, we were trained that, okay, so here we are, and if the sky's falling, we need to figure this out
Wow.
because this is life, this is how it happens,
Yeah.
and we need to fix it without knowing what the heck we were doing.
Right. So, okay, for people who are listening, we're having two conversations here that are really important. We're specifically talking about stress and anxiety as a lifestyle in particular with the baby boomer generation as you uniquely experienced it. And also, that conversation that is sort of the overarching part of this is what was taught from the silent generation to your generation. And so I want to unpack that a little bit more, and we're going to come back to your specific experience. When you were growing up and were taught from your parents or just an observation of your other, classmates, people living in your neighborhood, being especially being a New Yorker kind of thing, what was the conversation around responsibility, stress, and anxiety? Or was that even a conversation that your parents were having or your grandparents were having?
The only conversations I remember of was, to be quite honest, was
Yeah.
responsibility.
Hmm.
There was no such thing as learn that there was no such thing as stress and anxiety. It didn't
What is
exist
that?
in our
What is
what
that?
it was not in our culture. We don't do that here. It's not in our family. And because I remember talking to my mom, and my mother just looked at me, and my aunt was there, and she says, "Listen, we come from a family where we went out to the fields, we had our babies, we slapped them on our back, and we kept going."
Hmm.
And I remember years later being in an office lab with some young ladies, and one of them came in, uh, and she says, "Why is there so much talk about postpartum depression? Does anybody ever remember hearing about postpartum depression?" And we were all of the no, there was no such thing or talk or discussion about postpartum depression or anxiety or anything like that. There was just, you have your baby, you do this, and you keep moving forward.
Hmm.
Now, do you hear the little stories from different families and cultures and stuff like that? Oh my gosh, she had a child and then she lost her mind. She went crazy.
But
You know,
the
yeah,
little
just
story.
a little teeny tiny
Yeah.
bit of the story, right?
Hmm.
But nobody dug in deeper, and there was no empathy for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was just like, this was it. So maybe part of me with stress and anxiety was, how do you call it, when you ignorance is bliss, like,
Yeah.
when you don't know what it is
Hmm.
and you find yourself going into it, you're wondering, oh my god, why is this happening?
Hmm.
And then you wonder if you're losing your mind. And my generation started becoming a little bit more aware of, I guess, mental illness and having
Hmm.
anxiety attacks and stuff. But still, there was also a conversation that was kept taboo.
Right. Right.
So if you had a grandparent or an uncle or an aunt that suffered from this, and you did something off, everybody would just turn around and look at you like, oh, is she going to be one of those that's carrying that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
instead of the resources that we have now, that we talk about it, we try to be supportive, we try to get the tools to them. So it was, the conversations of responsibility was the key. Never, I don't ever have any recollection about dealing with stress or anxiety.
Wow. And so when we were sitting down looking at conversations that we wanted to have, and especially that you've been hearing, I've been hearing in my research, it was releasing stress and anxiety as a lifestyle. And so what I'm hearing you say is the first thing that we have to sort of do, especially if we're looking at your generation in particular and things that we all can learn, is assess where have we been programmed to believe that stress and anxiety is a must happen lifestyle. Now, a lot of pushback that I know, like my generation have in particular, is rest. And they're saying all the time, rest is resistance, and you have to rest in order to get the things you really want to do, and the hard work of it all is a sense of struggle. How have you been able to, especially now in retirement, sort of decipher what is hard work that is needed versus things that you can release and let go of and retrain yourself on, especially in this new life um, era that you're in?
I was able to learn to do that recently, and that was over really refocusing on your rings of fluidity.
Okay. And so, folks
Okay.
who are listening, she's talking about one of the exercises from the actual pilot film, Just Beginning, the Rings of Fluidity. And you all can look at that at justbeginning.info to learn more and understand the context of it. Okay, go ahead, Sandy.
So what I did was that I took stress, overall stress, and then I broke it down into categories within my health, family, paying bills, the grieving process,
Mm-hmm.
um, retirement and stuff like that. Then I had to be honest and say, well, there's some stress that is healthy and productive, like
Mm-hmm.
within myself. Like
Mm-hmm.
um, I I get there's stress that like if I have you give me a deadline, somebody calls me up and tell me they need a cake for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That's stress, but it's kind of like a positive habit because it's something that I enjoy doing. So the
Uh-huh.
fact that I can whip up this cake, get it together, make somebody happy, and do something with that, at the end, I feel like I've done. Am I stressed out? Yes. Do I look like I'm a chicken without the head running around in the kitchen? Yes. But in the
So it sounds
end,
like purpose and productivity is
is
really
also
that. Yeah, go ahead. Uh-huh.
yeah. So then there's that, and then within my health, the stress came from within myself because I knew on the surface I hadn't been neglecting my health for, I think, close to 10 years, to
Which
be
was a
honest.
part of sort of just the ingrained stress and anxiety as a lifestyle for you.
Correct.
Got you.
Dealing with the work schedule I had, the care schedule I had, because at that point in time, I was caring for my mom and my husband. I had to put in, I was in an administrative position. So I had to give 100% at work to make sure that I had the capability to change my schedule around. So if something happened at home with my husband or my mom, I could
Mm,
address that and not be penalized at work or
mhm,
cause any disasters that they could say, oh, listen, you weren't here and this is what happened.
mhm,
So it was doing all that juggling. Um, so that then when with his passing in February, I had like and then I says, okay, now I have to take care of me. But then
mhm,
I was going through the grief and the anxiety and stressing myself out. Okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow. And then tomorrow I wasn't in the headspace or the emotional space, or I would pick up the phone, try to make the phone call. And, and then I had to sit down. I says, okay, I have to prioritize what I have to do to get this
mhm,
happening and then start working on it. And then I started learning to let go because of the tools you gave me to let go what was really important in my life, what should be a
mm,
priority right now. Well, my
mhm.
priority was me,
Yeah.
taking care of my health, because now I have my kids and my grandkids that that I want to be there for.
Mhm. And I
And
like that differentiator. You say that I want to be there for, not need to be there for.
and that was the other thing to learn, that now I'm at a point in my life that this is for me.
Mm,
There's nothing wrong with wanting to be the type of grandmother that's there to babysit and stuff like that. I was that grandma even while I was working, especially
mhm,
on weekends. But I did it out of love and joy.
mhm,
It was good. So to me, it was a no brainer. But I now I'm at a point in my life, I says, okay, this time is for me. And
mm,
I can say that so easily, guilt free, honestly now, because that
mm.
was another thing with his passing, feeling guilty. Like in one way, I was taking a breath
Your
because he had
husband's passing.
my husband's passing.
Mhm,
He had suffered so much, and it took so much energy on his part and my part
mhm.
because he loved me, and he even in his illness, he realized the amount of care and time that took to care for him.
Yeah.
So it was also having those conversations with him to alleviate that stress and anxiety that he was going through,
Hmm.
to let him know that it was okay, that this was teamwork. That's, you know, that's why I was here with him for, and uh take care of that, and now to be able to breathe a little bit, I learned I can do that. I don't have anything to feel guilty about.
Hmm.
I've met my commitments with him and
Yeah.
everything, and now it's okay. I can do me now.
And so, what I'm hearing you say, especially from the very beginning parts of transitioning that anxiety and stress as a lifestyle into reprogramming yourself so that the stress and the anxiety is sort of now flipped to purpose and productivity, but as you uniquely see it. Because Sandy, what you're sharing is really, it seems like you've had a come to Jesus moment, if you will, and sort of an aha about what are the inner priorities that matter to you and what is it that you want to do at this particular point in time, and even your relationships you were talking about with your husband, being in conversation and saying, here's what I need, can you support that? This is what you need, can you support that? And so it seems even like in your relationships within yourself, having a very clear understanding of what your needs and your desires are right now versus who you had to be in your previous role at work. Is
Yeah,
that?
and no, that's on point, and that's correct. And the other thing is, I remember being at a point where no matter what was going on in my life, I would tell myself, my life is good. I got a home, I got healthy kids, I got a job, I can pay my rent, and I was like that. But I didn't also realize how sometimes people's, and maybe you help me explain this, our exposure to other energies outside, like in work and people that we associate with, people that are constantly going and saying, oh my God, every other word, I'm so stressed every morning. Oh my God, you don't realize the stress getting into work. And you don't realize how stressed I was when I left here. I went to the supermarket. Oh my God, and I was so stressed out. And in my head, I'm being a horrible human being. I said, so what did you do? Pick up? Oh, I had to get the cereal. I got the juice. And in my head, I'm saying, what the hell? You got stressed out over picking up juice, eggs, and bread and stuff like that. Like, how does that make any sense? But
Mm,
I have to be honest, there came a point where I found myself using that phrase.
yeah.
It's like you pick it up and it gets into your language or your vocabulary.
Huh.
And the eye opener for me was my grandson Justin. He's in his 30 now, right? So he was about 12 at the time. And he said, Grandma, he said, lately you've been talking how stressed you are. You weren't stressed before, but now lately, oh, I'm stressed about this, I'm stressed about that. And then it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I looked at him, I said, oh my God, you're right. I says, I need to take that language, I need to take that phrase out of my, and really look at things for what they are.
Yeah. And Sandy, I love that. First of all, shout out to your grandson for that awareness. But this goes back to what you were talking about around the programming, the silent generation said this is sort of the ways in which you handle stress and anxiety. You don't handle it, you don't talk about it. The relationship that you're talking about in terms of like employees and just friends, I'm stressed out about this, I'm stressed out about that. And then all of a sudden, just by association, you take that language on and you realize, wait a minute, do I really have to be stressed out about going to get the juice and going to get that? Maybe I'm not really stressed out about it, but because it's the common language of what people are saying around you, we get programmed in believing that that is just the way that life is or is how it has to be. And we get assimilated to something that was just never ours to be even to begin with.
Exactly. And one of the things when I started breaking everything down with the rings of fluidity, I started thinking about what was the purpose and why I was allowing things that
Mm.
really didn't have, really wasn't, shouldn't have caused me anxiety and shouldn't have caused me stress. And then I started looking back on a lot of the different chapters of my life until here. And I finally wrote down something that was it, um, was I being driven to justify my existence?
Ooh,
Be-
say more. Say more.
Every once in a while, I get something right. So I says, was I using stress and anxiety to justify me being here? So if I wasn't with everybody else going through being in the same category of having stress or anxiety, or
Mm.
being in the same group of people or in the same club or gang or stuff, did I really exist? Was then
Yeah.
what then what was,
Not
was I,
knowing what sense of purpose and fulfillment you could have outside of the titles of being stressed, being having anxiety, this and that, because that probably gave you a false sense of purpose because there was something that you
yes,
could hold on and attach a title to, and you could belong to something
exactly.
even if it wasn't healthy for you. How and let's stay there and talk about that, Sandy. That's so brilliant. You've even shared, and I believe during our filming process a few years ago, that that was something that you were able to even see in your generation in general, finding pieces of things to attach themselves to just to feel a sense of belonging and a sense of community around something, even if it wasn't healthy for them.
Yeah, because I think we were so,
Oh.
I don't know if we were, if we're also a generation because of the mentality of, um pick yourself up by the bootstraps.
Hmm.
I always heard, motivational speaking when it started coming out. Everybody was doing Vince Lombardi, different things. And I'm like, okay, so that works. Like, does that only work on the football field? How do I incorporate that? Like, into my life. I'm like, I'm trying to do the analogies and stuff like that, because the hospitals and the different jobs, the positions I had, always says, oh, we're going to, give you things. But all I heard was a lot of quotes and rah rah rahs, and
Hmm.
get you geared up in that moment,
Hmm.
but nothing, and not so much tangible, but nothing to make you think, to provoke you to look within yourself. And that was the other thing. I think
Mm.
we were afraid to look within ourselves to see what our role was in it. It was
Mm.
easier to say, well, that's how I was raised. That was what my family expected.
Mm.
And even my husband's family, a lot of the stuff that they did that didn't make sense to me, well, that's how we've always done it.
Mm.
So then my reply was, well, yeah, but that doesn't make it right. Like, it
Mm.
doesn't mean that it's healthy,
Mm.
you
So
know.
no self-examination of the core reasons as to why we do certain things and what our function and responsibility is in that. Instead of challenging, this is just who we are. I'm too old to change. This is just what my
Can't
parents
teach can't
did.
teach an old dog new tricks and stuff
Mm.
like that. And
Mhm.
then how we were prepared for our work or professional life was that, and I could be wrong, but this is from my experience and the people that I've dealt with, is that you went into work and you worked 40, 50 years, right?
Yeah.
In order to earn the freedom then to afterwards kind of like be lazy, just lay around and do nothing, which
Mm.
those that follow that, were having a real hard time with it because
Your
retirement was supposed to,
contemporaries,
yeah,
your contemporaries.
because
Okay. Mhm.
I had a cousin that financially put himself in a situation where he was able to, and he was 10 years 10 years younger than I am.
Mhm.
He was able to retire at 55, and I'm still burning the midnight oil at the hospital. But I said good for him. He can do traveling. And then, there's only so much cleaning and ball playing and going out with the fellas. And then everybody's got a schedule, everybody's got kids. And oh no, I can't do this because this weekend we're doing this, that, and the other. And, he would get on the phone. He goes, he says, this isn't what I thought it would be. I
Ah.
said, what do you think was going to happen?
Mhm.
You were able to leave at 55 and you're financially well off. I says, and now, you've done a couple of things that you had, I guess you could call it on your bucket list or things that you wanted to do. So
Right.
you can, now I says, so what do you have? You can get up at any time of day, you can cook what you want, you can this, you don't have a set structure in your schedule, but now what?
Hmm.
How do you live, like this? And it took a while, and unfortunately for him, he got a little bit reckless financially, but then unfortunately he also got Lou Gehrig's disease,
Mm.
which
Mm.
ended his life much faster than we thought. But he says, I wish I had planned a little bit different, or I had done a little bit more better choices. The thing is, we don't see, I don't think we were given, my generation was given any information like to plan for retirement, how it was viewed, that it
Mhm.
should be like a second chapter of your life or the afternoon of your life, because I don't consider it the end.
Mhm.
So nobody wanted to talk about
The emotional wellness, the spiritual wellness, the purpose, and
the purpose. And then
yeah.
people were retiring like I did, where my identity was locked into my job.
Mhm. Hence the
And
stress and the anxiety.
right. So now all of a sudden you're not the president at the ding dong function and over here. And then so nobody comes says, oh, here comes the president, this and that. And there's not that cheering and stuff and the stuff. And now you walk in places and people are moving in and out of the roles. And then you come in and you don't recognize the place, you don't recognize the faces. And oh, I used to work here before I retired from it. Oh, okay, good. Like, so who are you here to see?
Yeah.
Like,
Wow. Like, who are you now? You were the big
exactly.
dog at that particular point. Sandy, during our field research and we were on the street, sort of the man on the street, and we were interviewing different people. One woman, she wanted to talk off camera, and she said that she didn't feel comfortable sharing it publicly, but she would tell me parts of her story. And she said her and her husband were at a function, and she was just like maybe a few months out from retiring because it's already named. And her husband said to her, um, he was looking around the party, and he goes, "So, who do you think you're going to be now that you're not X person?" And she said, "I remember looking at him saying, 'What do you mean?'" And we'll say that her name is Katie. He goes, "No, who are you gonna be now that you're not Katie, the big wig person?" And she said, "I never considered that at all. And now that I am in retirement, he was right. It completely shifted so much for me because I am no longer the in the game, as they say, and have sort of the power that I had before." And so she was going through her transition of trying to figure out who is she without quote unquote the power, without the title, without the prestige, without who she was before she is now entered into retirement. And she said in particular that gave her a certain level of stress and anxiety that she never even considered that she would take into her retirement a previous job title that she said had no more power at all.
Right. You don't realize how much power, depending on the position you have, when you're leaving that position, number one.
Huh.
And then the other thing is with the identity linked to it. Oh God, I got lost with Katie over here. I'm
Oh
trying to
no,
think of what the
this is good. Yeah.
um
The identity that's tied into.
yeah, there was something that clicked in my head with the thing with Katie, and now I lost it. So
Oh,
it'll
will
it'll come back. It'll
it'll
come
come
back.
back.
It'll come back.
And
But
and, and
yeah,
so
I can
go ahead.
understand where she was at.
Yeah, and so I remember asking her, in this case, did the seat give you power, or did the power, or did you give power to the seat? And she said, I no one's ever asked me that question before. I said, so if you didn't feel like you, Katie, had the power to inform the seat, if the seat that you deemed as power is no longer there, how would you feel that you ever had any power to begin with? Or also, the identity restructuring that would definitely have to take place would be catastrophic. And she said, I'm learning now how to just be Katie. And I think even in my work with just older adults in general, that stress and anxiety of go, 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 be responsible. You're only as good as your title and your name and things like that. That has drastically created a group of individuals who have no identity structure into who they are becoming, because it's all was just sort of an all or nothing kind of thing.
And it was the role that you were playing and everything else. The other thing is, like, when you leave a position like that, like I remember in the first 4 weeks after I left my job, or when I left, I remember getting phone calls, emails. My phone was blowing up
Uh-huh.
because I was taking care of a lot of things, and I think at that point in time they didn't realize where I was
Hmm.
instrumental in. So Adam says, "Oh, you see, they're regretting it. That
Adam, your son.
yeah, Adam, my
Uh-huh.
son, he was telling me, you see, they're regretting." He says, "You shouldn't answer the phone calls. You shouldn't tell them anything. Tell them you burned that stuff up." He says they don't deserve it. they don't, and
Keep
they don't
telling him,
deserve
Adam.
you. So, and the thing is, I told Adam, but I had one foot grounded. I said, "Honey, that's only going to be for now." I
Mm,
says, even if I don't give them anything, any information,
mm,
they're going to either sink or swim, but they're going to get it done.
mm,
I says, we think that, I says, for years, I did the job because my focus from my grandparents and my parents was that it didn't matter what kind of work you physically did, what your title was, but you needed to be, you had to do it so well that someone could look at it and say, "Oh, I know who did this,"
mm. Yeah.
without your signature, your name on it, or anything. And it
Wow.
was funny because my grandfather, he was says, "Take a bathroom." He says, "And you're assigned to clean to it." He says, "You clean that." He says, "And you do it in such a way that at any given time, somebody could walk in and say, 'Oh, I know Sandra was here because I know the quality of her work.'" So, and
Yeah.
I remember so many of us talking in high school, at work, getting ready for the patients, making those corners bed sheets at that time for the bed, making sure that quarter could bounce off the bed like we were in the military, like and answering those buttons of call because the patient needed something, or checking the IV lines and stuff like that. Everything, per protocol. And you work like that, but also in the background you're thinking, I'm being seen, they're picking up on this, only to find out, no.
Ooh. Ooh.
all that was lost, at
Wow.
least for me.
Huh.
And I know so many people that were retired or bought out,
Mm.
that the conversation as I was walking with them to the elevator was like all these years of whether it was billing, administration and stuff, and this is what they offered me, and
Mm.
not even a cake or a certificate or anything. You leave your keys, leave your ID, just make sure you take it to security, and that was it. My situation was it because, and I told one of the ladies because I called her and she goes, "Oh, you finally retired?" I said, "No, I got kicked out." I says, you know me. I says, I
Mm.
stand on a point on being ethical, and I says it ruffled a couple of feathers, so you know, this is what's going on, and being told that my service is no longer needed. So it was like, you do all this, and then, so how do I come home and tell my kids to take pride in their job, to do
Mhm.
quality work? So that added like
Understood.
another layer of stress for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
because here I'm living,
You're
and
living what your grandparents and your parents taught you to do, and this is how you would be rewarded in the world, only to sort of find out that after you leave this quote unquote profession, there's no other.
or even in the process, like I was booted out. These other people were, I think about these ladies and these men that were like so instrumental and key to so many things that went well within departments and saved patients,
Yeah.
that for we have to take comfort in what we did the right thing, right? Maybe
Right.
on a spiritual level,
Mhm.
right? That we did the right thing.
Mhm.
Because I believe that what we do, I may not receive the reward of it, but my children or my grandchildren or somebody along the way is going to
Mhm.
remember and
Yes.
extend that to somebody else, right?
Right.
But you get all these people that did all this amazing work,
Yeah.
and their life, the 30 years in one box, okay, goodbye, and that's it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And,
And so
you know,
that in itself is a form of stress and anxiety that no one's really talking about.
yeah.
That you have given 30, 40, 50 years to a profession, to something. In your case, your position was eliminated that forced you into retirement. And there aren't any bridge sort of building steps to say, let me support you in the process to help you navigate and maneuver who you once were, to do some healing work, to relearn, reprogram, and to figure out who you are on the other side of that.
And then now I hear there's a lot of stress and tension. I have a friend that she turned 70 and she finally retired. And her and I, we would always talk.
Mhm.
We have both said, I'm probably going to work till I'm 70,
Mhm.
because we always did the math and figure out Social Security, pension, and stuff like that. It was about dollars. Okay.
Yeah.
My situation was different and it changed. But for me, in one way, it was a blessing in disguise, and I had to look at it that way because of everything that went happened that came down afterwards. In her situation, reached out to her for her birthday, and I said, "So," I says, "You're hitting 70. Are you retiring?" She says, "I was going to hang out for a couple of years." She goes, "But you remember when you told me, you warned me," and I warned her. I says, "Whatever you do when you turn 70, be mindful of the writing on the wall where you work at."
Hmm.
I says, "If you start hearing A, B, C, or D," I says, "you need to make a conscious decision of how you want to leave that position."
Wow.
And she tells me, she
Wow.
goes, "Do you have a crystal ball?" She says, "Because it happened just exactly." She says, "New people coming in, them trying to change protocols." And she goes, "Doing this, that, and the other." She goes, "Stuff." She goes, "That I'm not in agreement. That's not good for the staff. That's not good, I think, in the long run for patient care." She goes, and I have a mouth on me. I says, "Yeah, we're that person." And she says, "What do I do?" I says, leave on your terms.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
says, I couldn't leave on my terms. I said, but you need to leave on your terms.
What do
I
you think that would, sorry to I just want to, this is such an important point. What do you think happens for someone who's about to retire when they're able to leave on their own terms versus not?
I think that there's less pain in the leaving. It's less painful, and you have at least your dignity.
Mm, mm,
There's, because you could, like I told her, I to take it. I says, she goes, yeah, but I didn't think I was. I said, listen, you need to look at your retirement because what I've learned with you, I says, as a new chapter.
mm,
Don't think that everything is over.
mm,
I says, think about the things that you've been wanting to do or that you couldn't, learn something new. I says, you have a lot of gifts. You've always wanted to try this, that, and the other. I said, go back to school, try a different trade. I says, if you don't want to sit around at home with your husband all day, get a part-time job in the medical profession close by, maybe 2 days a week,
mm.
or volunteer somewhere at a senior home and stuff like that with people. I says, you have a lot of options. Your life is not over.
Yeah.
I says, she's been handy with crafts. She like I says, take the time to sit and reflect.
Mm.
I says, and I told her, I says, I'm gonna send you some voodoo paper so you can write the names of all the people that pissed you off. I says, I says, and then put it someplace that's fireproof and burn it. And she goes, oh, I like that idea. I said, because we got to release the frustration somehow.
And so I, but I love that advice. Consider how you want to leave because it does impact, as your experience, somebody whose position was eliminated, it does shift
Yes.
sort of the level of, I would probably imagine, control, a sense of being able to decide for yourself and your family, and then also like you're saying the dignity of it. And so just in the few minutes that we have left, and we're gonna come back and talk about a myriad of things, but in particular for folks, because we're seeing this now, where older adults are, first of all, having to go back to work because of inflation, life, people are living much longer, things like that. But for folks in particular, whether it's corporate, not for profit, wherever the case may be, a lot of older adults are, their positions are being eliminated because of all the different restructuring and that's happening. And even
Yeah.
in my work, I'm hearing it over and over again. What advice would you say to them, especially around that stress and that anxiety? What are some of the first things that they can do if they go into work or if they've been, just kicked off of a team or laid off unexpectedly to begin a peaceful transition?
I think they need to take time to, um, and because I had thought about that, um, I think it's reflecting and recognizing what you're
Mhm.
going through,
Mhm.
acknowledging it, right?
So acknowledging their pain or their
Acknowledging the pain
experience.
and allowing it to happen, whether you need to
That's so good.
Netflix, a bottle of wine, go
Mhm.
out with friends, vent to somebody, do something that just, they got these places where you can go and beat something up where, listen,
Yeah.
bowling, whatever it is you need to do, but let it out.
Yeah. Don't
Don't let
hold
it,
in.
don't hold it in.
Yeah.
The next thing is that before, then recognizing, investigating, basically going back into yourself, so you recognize it, you're going to allow yourself to go through the pain and then take a moment to go back and say, okay, I let the anger out. I know that I have to retire. I have to do this. I feel shitty about it. All right. I got all this stuff out. I says, now, why is it that this means so much to me? Why it's hurting me so much? Did I put all of
Mm.
myself and now I don't know who I am? Because it's not just about losing a job, it's about losing an identity, it's about losing a purpose. It's about, we start
Mm.
thinking of losing,
That's so good.
loss, 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 but we don't take, it's hard to see, okay, so I lost this, but I'm really good at this, or I can do that, or this gives me an opportunity to go back to school or to do something
Mm.
else, or
What's the
maybe,
opportunity and the challenge?
and the
What are
challenge,
you
not,
gaining?
we had, it was hard for me to see because I was still caring for my husband at that time, the opportunities to
Mm.
see, but I still found ways of doing it.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
that, and that took a lot of stress off of me and him in our relationship and dynamic.
Mhm.
Okay. So that was great. So for anybody that's just coming home and stuff, I would say just go, we have to have our little pity parties about the loss,
Yeah.
but then we have to say, okay, that's that. What am I going to do now? I have other good qualities. Talk to yourself positive. What can I do?
Mhm.
What skills do I have? Do you want to volunteer at a school? Do you want to assist a teacher? Did you always want to work with kids that, uh, and go see, everybody needs something.
Yeah.
Or maybe doing like a buddy system at a school or going to a class. I just feel like there's needs within the younger generation where both of them should be mixed in together.
Mhm. Mhm.
um Maybe even helping younger people deal with stress at the jobs that you've already tackled. I
Yeah.
mean, I wouldn't know how to go about, but it comes down to networking.
Yeah. Yeah.
People talk and say, listen, I have these skills, I have that skills, I'm willing to share it with somebody at your job, or do you have something, and see what you have that you can offer.
So
So
overall, it's being very clear with yourself to acknowledge and accept this has happened. I have lost my job. My position was eliminated. And yes, it's happening and forcing me into retirement. And the second thing of what I'm hearing you say, after you acknowledge it, go within yourself and ask, what opportunities am I gaining now that I can utilize? And then looking at all of those unique skill sets. And even in the just beginning film, we talked about this heavily in terms of what are things that come easy for you in your easy circle that you were referencing early on. There lined up so many opportunities, and even from that it led for you to go back to school, to go to seminary, a
yep.
long-term thing that you have always wanted to do. And so that's something that I think other people can seek to as advisement for them as well. And so Sandy, this is our first conversation.
I want
And
to add one more thing
oh,
before you
sure.
put the title on it.
Yeah.
The last part that I had put down was to nurture, um, to be nurturing to yourself.
Say
Because
more.
I, I don't, I'm so concerned. I go and I tell people, be kind to yourself, and there's a lot of thing about self-care. But I think when we're in the process of going through this loss, this pain, this retirement, this moment of confusion, like what am I going to do now and stuff, because I'm prepared financially, but I never thought about A, B, C, and D. We need to take a step back and say, you know what, we need to nurture ourselves a little bit.
Hmm.
Okay. um and say, we're going to be okay, and be kind to ourselves. And just like you would console a child or a student or something, honey, this is okay, it's going to be short lived, it's going to get better, you're going to find something that's uniquely
Yeah.
yours. But we need to internalize and give that to ourselves.
Yeah. Nurture and console yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, Sandy, this is our first conversation, and we've been talking about to our audience stress and anxiety as a lifestyle, carrying that over into retirement. What are some tips and tools to support you in recognizing how that is manifesting? And there's going to be so many different topics that we're going to cover. We also had a great conversation and robust think tank around patterns and pathologies that older generations have taught us. And I love how we were able to have in a respectful way by saying, well, on the other hand, this was sort of the offshoot of what benefited your generation. And these are also some things that can be relearned and we can have reprogramming around. Um, Sandy, so you're on Instagram. Do you know your Instagram handle? I don't know it by heart. Do you know
Yes,
what your
it's Bello 829.
Okay. So, folks, if you are wanting to connect with Sandy, they can connect with you where on Instagram, Sandy?
Bello 829. I
All
hope
right.
that's right.
That that's, that that it sounds about right.
Yeah,
So,
sounds about right, right?
yeah. So, all right, folks. So, I'll be sure to have Sandy's correct Instagram handle in the show notes if it's not the one that she
Oh, it's
just.
Bello 829.
All right, S Bello 829. You can learn more about me by visiting at Plan A with Klay and Just Beginning Info across all social media platforms. And you can learn more about the Just Beginning project, about our trainer program, especially if you're someone that's transitioning into retirement, our Just Beginning dinner circles, and a myriad of things that we have coming up at justbeginning.info. Any last parting words, Sandy, you want to say before
We're on
we?
YouTube too, right?
Yeah. Oh, yep. We're on
Okay.
YouTube at Plan A with Klay, and that's where this will go ahead and live underneath the Just Beginning playlist. All right, folks. Sandy, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your
Thank
robust
you.
knowledge with us, and we'll see you all in our next conversation. Peace.
Bye.